I have a magnificent campaign update, shocking campaign update, at least by all comparison in regards to what people would have thought before going into this particular primary. Charles Booker is going against McGrath. McGrath was considered the only person in this race, if we're being entirely honest. I mean, yes, Booker was in the race prior, but nobody really was paying him that much attention until protests. The protests change not just the tint of this race, but I would argue the tint of this nation. And I don't entirely mean this in the standpoint of tint as color. I mean tint from the standpoint of perspective. I think the perspective changed. When you see people pulling down the statues, what do you think is happening here? People are really thinking that this is entirely like blacks raiding the statue. Whites, blacks, etc. have decided, many of the people in the population, especially if you're talking about Democrats, I think it's like 40%, that this behavior is justified based upon the moral argument that this person should be there. Columbus and his consequences, committing mostly inciting a genocide, not to mention the rapes and the murders and the people that they were grabbing and transporting. He does not deserve to be held as a symbol of reverence, and taking a moral argument to do so. Now, the reason why I'm saying it in these terms is because when you look at polling from a perspective shift, it has been radical in a very short period of time. Angie Mama, maybe that's racist. Yes, that's been racist for a very long time. But Angie Mama at this point says, fair enough, I see it. Football players, for Kaepernick, they say, you're right, I see it. And you have a large part of white America that looks at the protests and say, okay, you're right. That murder was infinitely ghastly. It's 9 minutes, roughly, in which one man rammed his knee into the throat of another man until that man died. At which point, for 2 more minutes, he kept his knee on that man's throat, where society as a whole, 300 million people, could watch and bask in the horror of it all. The perspective shifted. On Black Lives Matter, the perspective shifted. And on this notion of the protests, you had like 80% of the public saying, fair enough. It's not so much that the public agrees with the defund the police. They don't even like the phrasing of it. What they agree with is that there's something wrong here. It's a reason why NASCAR was willing to take down its Confederate symbol. And I would make the argument, it is the reason why Charles Booker is right now leading in this Kentucky race. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. I like to tell you, actually I don't, that this content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you for doing me. That part I don't mind telling. I don't like having to say the first part. I don't like the money requests. Nevertheless, this is Kentucky. Kentucky people who want to vote. Don't let people tell you that that people in this country don't want to vote. They just need something to vote for. The numbers in this election were apparently huge. Keep in mind, 600,000 people live in Jefferson County, this area. One polling place for 600,000 people. They shut down over 80% of the polling locations. If I'm not mistaken, that number is like 90%. One location for 600,000 people. And just so happened that 50% of the black population lives in this area. On top of that, I'm going to show you something else. This is the racial breakdown of Kentucky. 87% white, 7% black, or 8% black. That's it. Other races get 0.99%, Native American 0.22%, and you get 2 or more races, 2.25%. Kentucky is lily white. Nevertheless, an African American running on racial justice and economic justice. But the Breonna Taylor case, the criminality of the cops and the way they get away with it, this was a focal point. This, and again, economic justice. allowed him to get okay, we'll give you a new listen. And in that new listen, those people heard this. I'm going to play part of this, but this is him.
He never saw us coming. He never saw those medical bills pile up. He never asked what we needed. He spent trillions of dollars bailing out his friends while we lined up for unemployment. He let the government abandon America, abandon Kentucky. I explained to you how these types of laws would kill people. My life matters too, Speaker.
You are out of order. Your 3 minutes are up.
My life matters too. Black lives matter. He never saw us coming. I grew up in 40203, the poorest zip code in the state. I've been invisible to people like Mitch McConnell my entire life. From the hood to the holler, we've all felt invisible and alone. But finally, the power of the people is beginning to show. We've seen who keeps society running. It's the black janitors, the brown cashiers, the white folks stocking the shelves. The essential people are rising up. I've seen young people become preachers, cooks, medics. I've seen folks from the mountains. Everybody wrote off, fighting to say, my life matters. Nah, I don't feel alone anymore. I've seen America's future on the streets of Kentucky, a future where survival isn't so complex. My daughters can trust the water from their faucet. Brianna's door won't get kicked in. And the air isn't so toxic it could choke me out. We don't need to be so suspicious of our neighbors. We can build a world where you don't look over your shoulder when you walk down the street. You look forward. If people need health care, the government can provide health care for all. We know the government can help people get meaningful work, rebuilding America. From the hood to the highway, from the hood to the highway.
Another political race.
I hope you notice, when he was out there, the majority of those people were white. Oh, I love this. You have no idea how much I love intersectionality. Here's the thing. This is not, believe it or not, a black movement. It is not. Blacks make up 13% of this population. You may say it's instigated by such, yes. But understand, any successes that any one particular group gets, all of the groups get. Cops kill 1,000 people a year. Who do you think the majority of those people are? They are white. You may get a disproportionate number of blacks that get killed, especially unarmed, or for that matter, homeless or whatever. But from the standpoint of the disparity of the people that are killed, it's white. If they kill 1,000 people a year and the majority are white, how many of those cops are brought to justice for killing Americans? 99% of cops had no charges result in those killings. 99%. And of that 99%, I think you had of that 1% that actually was held accountable, 33% walked from that, meaning no jail time. Another 33% ends up with jail time. I hope you understand what I mean. It's it's unaccountability. And it's unaccountability killing Americans. Do you think that is right? Yes or no? Especially when you are also being killed in that process. We are marching, yes. And you are marching with us, yes. But I'm trying to make the point that it is not a singular thing. This is something that affects and impacts all of us. When he is arguing for economic justice, do you honestly believe that the only people he's talking about are blacks? You honestly believe that the only people who are poor in Kentucky are blacks? This gets to the point that I try to make when I make the class argument. The majority of the people in this country struggle, pillar to post, from the time they get from the grave to the time they drop dead. You have a section of this population, an elite class, that for the most part don't. And they are able to expropriate the wealth from the class that struggles. White, black, gay, straight, everything else in between. All of us. It is a collective action in this case. If you get half of the population that's poor, you have the majority that works paycheck to paycheck. You have another majority that doesn't have $500 in the bank. Again, blacks only make up 13% of the population. Yes, there is a massive wealth disparity in 10 to 1 from the standpoint of the average white family to the average black family. I think it's like 176,000 to 18,000. But Despite, and within the context of that massive wealth disparity, you still have a shared group of people of all sorts of races that are not in good straits and weren't in good position before this crisis hit and have now gotten to the point of just utter desperation. Those people will be thrown out of their houses. Now, he makes this argument about Breonna Taylor, but if you notice in this argument, Medicare for all comes out pretty early. In addition to Medicare for all, this notion of jobs and the thing that we can create these things if we need to. This is an aspirational, affirmative message for vote for me. He's gone so far as to make the point that, look, you guys continue to run people against Mitch McConnell where you come up with the same formula of a bland Democrat believing that you're going to get some kind of difference. You're not. An affirmational case is the case that you need to make, not having the guy sitting in his basement, but actually having somebody giving a message that those people can rally behind and say, yes, we want this person in office because we believe it is in our material best interest to put that person in office. It's not so much that he's immediately going to be the favorite in the McConnell race. He will be behind in the McConnell race if he's able to win and continue to stay in the lead in this race. That's not really the point. The point is you have continuously put up hacks against McConnell. And this guy, who has been able to catch fire and energy, having this lefty progressive message, if he is able to beat McGrath with all of her cash, his chances against McConnell, even though long shot, you can't count him out. Right now, the numbers in a tally is right here. Charles Booker, 43.5%. Amy McGrath, 40%. Now, these votes are still being tallied. It is not necessarily a situation where, everything has been viewed. We're not going to know what this is for a while. This was updated 52 minutes ago. Let me see if there's a new number or a new tally. And the tally is the same. I want to give you the most up-to-date information. Let's see, what do you call it? Election results. So another newspaper may have a different result. That's much, much sooner than what we have currently. So let's look for the past hour. All right, 11 minutes ago. Kentucky, hack damn. It has changed. 45.1% to Amy McGrath, 40.2%. Oh, if he wins. God, if he wins. That is so awesome. I mean, he is going to be a lightning rod against McConnell. I don't think McConnell knows what he's getting himself into. Former Marine Corps fighter pilot Amy McGrath was a clear favorite in this race early on, having raised millions of dollars with the help of an establishment Democrat leaders. Charles Booker, a 35-year-old black state representative, has made a surge after participating in protests over racial justice that erupted in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. He's earning the endorsement from national progressive leaders such as Bernie Sanders, Warren, and AOC. He was on Joy and Reid, I believe this was today, discussing 14 hours ago, discussing this race and what he thinks will or is taking place.
That movement, how much has that changed the way that Kentucky voters were thinking going in?
Well, I think leadership is defined by how you show up in the moments where you need it most. And we were grieving in the streets. There's a lot of pain and trauma even right now. And, I stood in those streets because that's where my family was. The people of Kentucky are my family. And they threw tear gas at them. They threw it at me too. But I didn't back down, and neither did Kentucky. And in this moment where we're demanding justice and accountability for Breonna Taylor and Mr. McAtee, the barbecue man, we're also talking about the root causes of why these things happen. And it speaks to my platform of structural change and making sure that we don't criminalize poverty, that we address racism within our institutions, and that we push for an understanding that we can invest in people, prioritize people, uplift our communities so that these things don't happen again. And because we're showing that courageous leadership, even in the height of racial tension, the people of Kentucky are saying, we know he's the leader to push us forward, and we're going to stand with him.
And, I saw you on Twitter. A lot of people saw and were retweeting you as you were telling people to stay in line yesterday. Only 200 polling places when there used to be 3,000. There's a lot of concern in a state like Kentucky that voter suppression is going to be a part of the mix in November. How confident are you that Kentuckians are going to have the ability to vote freely in November?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm confident that we're going to fight like hell to make sure they can. Kentucky's been one of the most disenfranchised states in the country. So historically, it's hard to vote here. And, having one polling location in an area the size of Jefferson County just naturally suppresses votes. And then changing the location, a lot of folks not even understanding that there would be one central location. And then also having one time of 6 p.m. When a lot of traffic is converging on one location. So we're going to be mindful of the opportunity to make sure that we have everyone be heard at the ballot box, and we'll be ready to fight when those paths are blocked. Kentucky needs to be heard in this moment. Our voices matter too much.
Yeah. Okay.
So I wanted you to hear that because I wanted you to hear the challenges that basically he was facing. I mean, again, 7% or 8% of Kentucky is black. So you may say, okay, well, he may get a demographic from the African-American community because maybe he speaks to our issues. Yes, he's talking about this very specific issue of criminal justice. And yeah, he wants justice for Breonna Taylor, like all of us. So yes, that point. They kicked down her door with an illegal no-knock warrant. And they're shocked as shit that somebody who's in the house may shoot at them because, you have goons coming through your house in the middle of the night with guns. And those cops have not been charged with anything yet. And the prosecutor is slow walking, making those charges. So they were freaked out that they thought people were going to burn down the courthouse when the guy came out and gave a statement. Maybe that's what power needs to be. Maybe it needs to be this understanding that this is a zero tolerance issue. That the notion that you can kill somebody flagrantly in that way, and your society in no way has any consequences for the people who do that is phenomenal. It's mind-blowing that a society allows that. And the moment that a society allows that, the public maybe should. That's where I am on that. I mean, this is somewhat of a natural reaction to being allowed to flagrantly abuse, kill, as under this notion that a sovereign can act in accordance to its own will. In this case, you have somewhat of a police department with a public and a judicial system that gives it an entire walk. Because basically, it's the policeman policing the policeman, which is something that they don't necessarily do. Booker was able to catch fire. And understanding when he's saying community, he is not talking, this is not a racial thing. Yes, there's a racial element to this. But the economic justice argument is an argument for all of them. It becomes this class argument. And it was the protests that drew a circle around him. And in drawing that circle around him, you had a white community that said, okay, fair enough. That's phenomenal. Because you can't make the argument to me that it was the black Kentuckians that put up. There's 8% of them. There's only 8%. So this really is a perspective shift that the public itself, in some odd way, changed its mind almost in the moment. When we're seeing those polls that say how whites were viewing this or how the society was viewing this in the public and doing the breakdowns in regards to Democrats and Republicans and so forth, and you had this large group of people who said, okay, fair enough, we get it. And all of these other actions that was taking place from like NASCAR and Angie Mama and all of these other things that were saying, okay, we're going to take the statue down. We're going to remove the statue. That's symbolic, yes. And it doesn't hit at the heart of the economic argument. That's also true. And it entirely misses the point that you have to deal with the economics if you're going to deal with the societal issues of violence or the societal issue of drug abuse or suicides or high mortality rate. If you're going to deal with any of that stuff, even like basic crime, you got to deal with the communities that you have abandoned. So, well, fair enough. Statues don't do that. Fair enough. But there's a perspective shift. And isn't it true that the perspective shift comes first? The people who are out on the streets, it may be chaotic, it may be disorganized, they may be arguing, screaming for something that the public doesn't necessarily agree with. But whatever, the public got something out of it. And in getting something out of it, they understood something that is being communicated in a way that I think goes beyond just the direct arguments that is being made within the context of the people who are out there communicating. I think it goes to an issue of race and the perspective of race and how our society has basically regarded those things in a very specific way, ignoring the effect that it has on the other part of your community that has been here with you, thick and thin, worst of it, ignoring that part of it. And it draws a focus around it. I think in doing so, he got a bump from that. And not just a bump, he got fire from that to some degree. And in this race, there's still a lot of votes to count, so don't misunderstand me, but he's leading. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks all.